Okay. Imagine this scenario. It's a Tuesday night. You've had one of those days.
The worst kind.
The absolute worst. Everything that could go wrong did. Your boss was on your case. The commute was a total nightmare, and your brain is just, it's fried.
Hmm.
But you have a secret weapon. You know for a fact that there is a very specific, very delicious leftover sandwich sitting right there on the middle shelf of your
The
refrigerator.
light at the end of the tunnel, that one perfect thing.
Exactly. You can almost taste it, the Gouda, maybe a little bit of pesto. You walk into the kitchen, you pull open the fridge door, your hand reaches out for that little foil wrap beacon of hope, and, it's not there.
Oh no.
It's gone. Empty shelf.
That is a universal tragedy. The missing snack. It's like a visceral kind of pain.
It really is, and it sounds so ridiculous to say it out loud, but in that one split second, you go on this crazy emotional roller coaster.
You do?
First, it's just confusion. Wait, I know I put it right there. Then a little bit of panic, and then this flash of just like hot, genuine anger. Who ate my sandwich?
Right. Who did this to me?
You feel violated. You feel like the universe has somehow broken a contract with you.
And that reaction, that tiny micro moment of shock and, frankly, entitlement,
Yeah.
that is actually the perfect way into what we're talking about today.
It really is.
Because whether it's a missing sandwich, a sudden layoff, a relationship ending, or some huge global economic shift, the psychological mechanism is surprisingly similar.
How so?
We map out our reality, right? We expect things to be a certain way,
Mhm.
and when the map no longer matches the territory, we don't just adapt, we glitch.
We glitch hard. And today, we are doing a deep dive into what is basically the manual for fixing that glitch. We are unpacking Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson and Kenneth Blanchard.
And look, before you roll your eyes,
Because I know some of you are.
we all are, a little bit.
Mm.
This book has been on every corporate bookshelf since, 1998? It's been memed to death. But
Yeah.
we're going to look at this a little differently today.
We are. Because on the surface, yeah, it looks like a children's book. It has large font, it's got little illustrations, it's this fable about mice running around a maze.
But if you strip away that cutesy exterior, you find this surprisingly rigorous framework for, well, for cognitive behavioral therapy and for change management.
It's a book that somehow sits in the business section, the self-help section, and the psychology section all at the same time.
It's a genre bender, a
Ah.
very deceptive little book.
And millions of copies sold, translated into pretty much every language you can think of, and yet it really divides people.
It does.
Some people credit it with literally saving their careers, and others call it, corporate propaganda designed to make you docile and compliant.
And our mission today is to figure out why. We're going to decode the parable. We're going to help you identify which character you are right now. And be honest with yourself, it's probably not the one you want to be.
Probably not.
And we're going to tackle that controversy head on.
Absolutely. We have to look at the dark side of the cheese, so to speak. But before we get to the critique, we need to understand the structure. Because Johnson didn't just write a fable, he wrapped it in a narrative frame.
Right, it's a story within a story. It kicks off with a character named Michael, and he's at his high school reunion in Chicago.
And I think that setting is actually really important.
Oh, it's crucial. A high school reunion is the ultimate comparison trap.
Right.
You're surrounded by people you grew up with, and everyone is secretly, or not so secretly, measuring their life against everyone else's.
Totally. They're talking about their successes, sure, but the conversation always drifts to the curveballs.
Always. The quarterback who lost his business, the valedictorian who's going through a really messy divorce. It creates this atmosphere of vulnerability.
Exactly. Everyone thought their life would follow this straight line, a simple path to the cheese. And it didn't. So Michael decides to tell them a story that helped him cope when his own life went off the rails. He tells them the story of the maze.
Okay, so let's break down the core metaphors here before we meet the cast. We have the cheese and the maze.
Simple symbols for really complex things.
Right. So cheese is basically the dopamine hit. It represents whatever it is you want in life. It's the symbol for happiness, for fulfillment.
So for some people, that's a job title, a corner office, an equity package.
For others, it's just money. Or it could be a loving relationship, or spiritual peace, or even just, good
It's
health.
the target. It's the why.
Precisely. And then there's the maze. The maze represents the environment where you look for what you want.
So that could be the organization you work for or the community you live in
Or even the family structure you're a part of. It's the confused, often obscure territory we all have to navigate to find that prize. And the thing about mazes is they are full of dead ends. and dark corners.
Okay, so we're in this confusing maze. We're hunting for our cheese. Now, let's meet the contestants. Johnson gives us 4 characters. 2 are mice and 2 are little people.
And that species distinction is probably the most important part of the psychology here. The mice are named Sniff and Scurry.
Sniff and Scurry.
They represent the reptilian brain, or maybe the basal ganglia. They're instinctual. They don't have complex egos. They just react to sensory input.
They're the doers. So let's break them down individually because they actually have distinct roles. First up, Sniff.
Sniff is the pattern recognizer. He's the one who smells the change early.
Okay.
In a corporate setting, Sniff is that person who notices the boss has stopped smiling in meetings, or that the quarterly reports are taking longer and longer to publish.
He detects when the cheese is getting old or the supply is dwindling.
Exactly. He have high situational awareness. He's the early warning system.
And then there's Scurry.
Scurry is just pure kinetic energy. He's the executor. Once that pattern is recognized or once the cheese is actually gone, he just scampers into action.
He doesn't sit around and analyze why the cheese is gone.
Not at all. He just starts running to find new cheese. He doesn't overthink. He just moves.
So, Sniff and Scurry are simple, they're efficient, but then we have the little people, Hem and Haw, and they're the size of mice, but they act like us, like modern humans.
They represent the prefrontal cortex, our complex, emotional, analytical brain, and the book's central irony that this big brain, which is supposed to be our evolutionary advantage, so often becomes our prison.
Because they have memories, beliefs.
And most importantly, egos. They attach their identity to the cheese.
Hem is the character that I think a lot of us might secretly fear we are.
Oh, for sure. Hem denies and resists change. He represents the fear that any change will lead to something worse. He anchors himself to the way things work.
He's the nostalgia guy.
Totally. And when the cheese disappears, he feels personally victimized by it. He's the one saying, "This isn't fair. I worked hard for this. The world owes me this cheese."
Yeah.
He wants to stay in Cheese Station C even when it's completely empty.
And finally, there's Haw.
Haw is the transitional character. He's really the proxy for you, the reader. He starts out just as hesitant and afraid as Hem. He doesn't want to go back into that dark, dangerous maze.
But he's different.
He's different. Haw has the ability to self-reflect. He eventually learns to laugh in his own fear. He realizes that staying put is basically a death sentence, and he starts to visualize something better. He represents that whole journey of adaptation.
So here's the setup. The inciting incident, if we're thinking in movie terms. All 4 of them, Sniff, Scurry, Hem, and Haw, they find this massive stockpile of cheese at a place they call Cheese Station C.
It's the jackpot.
An absolute jackpot.
It is the ultimate comfort zone.
Yeah.
And notice the difference in behavior as soon as they find it. The mice, Sniff and Scurry, what do?
They keep their running shoes tied around their necks. They show up early every morning. They inspect the cheese. They stay ready.
They enjoy the cheese, but they don't trust it to last forever.
Meanwhile, Hem and Haw, they get comfortable, very comfortable. They put their running shoes away. They actually start decorating the walls of Cheese Station C.
I'm moving in.
They're building their entire ego and identity around this pile of cheese. They start feeling like they deserve it.
Which just makes the inevitable shock so much worse. They confuse luck with entitlement.
And one morning, they show up, and the cheese is gone.
For Sniff and Scurry,
Yeah.
not a surprise. They noticed the supply was dwindling for weeks. They just put their shoes on, look at each other, and leave to find new cheese. No drama.
But Hem and Haw, they lose it. They just start screaming, "It's not fair! And who moved my cheese?" They're completely paralyzed.
And this brings us to the first major psychological phase the book explores. We can call it the Hem phase, the psychology of resistance.
Yeah, let's dig into that. Why do they stay? I mean, the cheese is clearly gone. Why are they just standing there analyzing it?
It's the classic paralysis of analysis. They're trying to intellectualize a situation that simply requires action.
They're stuck in their heads.
Completely. But deeper than that, it's the emotional cycle of grief and change.
Yeah.
You can actually see him going through the stages. First, denial. It must be here somewhere. Maybe it's hidden behind the wall.
Then anger. Who did this to me? This is an injustice.
Then bargaining. Maybe if we just wait here or work harder, the old cheese will come back. And finally, depression. Just sitting there in the dark.
The book uses this really powerful real-world example to illustrate that Hem mindset. It's the story of the encyclopedia company. This one really hit home for me because it shows how even smart, successful organizations can get trapped by their own success.
Oh, this is a classic business case study. It's the story of Jessica and Basically, the Encyclopedia Britannica model. Think back to how encyclopedias used to be sold.
A guy comes to your door.
A guy comes to your door. It was a massive operation. You had these expensive sets of like 30 hardcover books, and the backbone of the whole business was this huge door-to-door sales force working on really high commissions.
That model was the old cheese. It worked for decades. It was prestigious.
Exactly. But then the cheese moved. Technology shifted. It suddenly became possible to put an entire encyclopedia on a single computer disk, a CD-ROM.
And sell it for a fraction of the cost.
A tiny fraction. And the company's reaction wasn't, wow, great, let's pivot. It was pure, unadulterated resistance.
They just dug in their heels.
They refused to change. Their argument was that their sales force was their identity. They truly believed the personal touch was the product. They couldn't imagine a business model without those high commissions and those door-to-door guys.
So they ignored the technological shift because it threatened their sense of self-worth and their whole established way of doing things.
And the result was a predictable catastrophe. A competitor, Microsoft with Encarta, adapted to the new model. They sold the cheap disks.
In Jessica's company?
Sales just plummeted. They faced massive job losses. They were all standing in an empty cheese station C, arguing about how important their sales force was, while all the customers had already moved on to the new cheese.
They couldn't separate the mission from the method?
That's it right there. The mission was educating people. The method was selling heavy books. They got them confused.
That distinction is so key. There's another personal example in the book that I love, the story of Charlie Jones, the NBC broadcaster.
This is a fantastic example because it shows how we attach our identity to our specific roles, not our skills. Charlie Jones was a legend in track and field coverage. That was his thing, his passion. He'd covered it for the Olympics. That was his cheese. He was the track guy.
And then the boss moves the cheese.
Brutally, just like that. He gets removed from track and field and reassigned to swimming and diving. Now, for a sportscaster of his caliber, that feels like a demotion.
Or at least a slap in the face.
For sure. He didn't know the sport as well. He felt totally unappreciated. He was angry. I mean, he was hemming hard.
He was sitting there saying, it's not fair. I'm the track guy. You can't do this to me.
100%. But then, and this is the absolute key to the whole story, he realized his anger was only hurting him. The cheese had moved. The track assignment was gone. It wasn't coming back, no matter how much he complained.
So he made a choice.
He made a decision to learn everything there was to know about swimming and diving. He started studying.
And the interesting thing is the psychological payoff from that.
It's fascinating, right? The very act of learning something new made him feel young again. It gave him this new energy, this new purpose. And he ended up doing such a great job that he was eventually inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame as a broadcaster.
His career didn't end, it expanded.
It totally expanded, but only because he stopped staring at the empty track and field station and went looking for new cheese.
Okay, so that's the hem reaction getting stuck. But the book's whole point is that we should try to be Ha, so let's talk about that transformation. How does Ha break out of that fear loop? Because leaving the comfort of that empty station, even if it's empty, and stepping into the dark maze, that's terrifying.
It is. And Ha is interesting because he doesn't start out brave. Not at all. He's just as scared as him. He's imagining all the things that could go wrong in the maze. He thinks he's going to get lost or starve.
But he does something different.
He eventually asks himself the single most important question in the entire book.
What would I do if I weren't afraid?
That question is such a powerful cognitive tool. It forces a kind of dissociation. It separates yourself from your fear.
It's like, okay, let's acknowledge the fear is here, but let's just imagine for a second it wasn't calling the shots.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You simulate a reality where it isn't in charge. And Ha realizes his fear is the only thing keeping him in that empty room.
And he starts using visualization. This isn't just like wishful thinking, is it?
No, it's functional visualization. It's a technique. He stops imagining the horror of the maze, the dark corners, the dead ends, and he starts deliberately visualizing the specific details of finding new cheese.
He's imagining the taste, the texture.
The feeling of enjoying it. He's basically hacking his own motivation. He's replacing a fear-based narrative with a reward-based narrative.
Creating a dopamine anticipation response before he even finds the reward.
You got it.
Yeah.
And as he travels through the maze, he does something really important, especially for the reader. He starts writing lessons on the walls.
The handwriting on the wall. These are the little nuggets of wisdom he leaves behind, hoping that maybe, just maybe, him will eventually follow him. Let's look at a few of these.
One of the very first is, movement in a new direction helps you find new cheese. It sounds so obvious, but physiologically, action reduces anxiety. Staying still just amplifies it.
Momentum is the antidote to despair. I like that.
It really is. And another one is smell the cheese often so you know when it's getting old.
That's the sniff lesson. Pay attention.
It's the sniff lesson. We so often go on autopilot in our lives. We stop paying attention to our industry, our relationship, our health. We just assume it's fine until one day it's gone.
This is about constant vigilance, auditing your situation. Don't wait for the layoff notice to update your resume.
Exactly. And my favorite one is, change only surprises you if you're not expecting it and not looking for it.
That's the antidote to victimhood right there.
Totally. If you just accept that change is the default state of the universe, that entropy is real and the cheese is always moving, you're never caught off guard. You're never the person standing there yelling, "It's not fair," because you knew it was coming.
There's also this moment where Ha discovers the power of humor.
Yes. This is a great part. He just stops in the maze and starts laughing. He has this vision of himself, how ridiculous he must look, standing in an empty room, hungry, refusing to move, all because of his ego and his fear.
And that laughter breaks the tension.
Shatters it. He realizes that taking himself so seriously was the real trap.
He realizes that the fear of the change is usually worse than the change itself. The anticipation of the maze was terrifying, but actually being in the maze, it wasn't so bad. It was kind of an adventure.
It gave him agency. Being in the maze meant he was actually doing something about his problem instead of just complaining about it.
So we've got the individual journey, but this book became a massive bestseller because companies bought it in bulk. I mean, thousands of copies at a time. Managers were handing this out like candy. So let's talk about the organizational application.
The most famous case study is actually from the co-author's own organization, the Ken Blanchard companies. They were facing a big market shift where they needed to be more flexible, less bureaucratic. So they gave the book to over 200 employees.
What was the effect? I mean, did people just roll their eyes at this little mouse book?
Well, I'm sure some did initially, but what it did was it changed the language of the company. It gave them a shared, non-threatening shorthand.
So instead of filing a formal complaint about a new policy,
An employee could just walk into their manager's office and say, "Looks like they just moved our cheese."
and that diffuses the tension immediately.
It does. It depersonalizes the problem. It lowers everyone's defensiveness. And they also started categorizing behaviors. They identified the sniffs in their organization, the visionaries who could see market changes coming.
And the scurry?
And the scurries, the people who could execute fast and get things done.
Yeah.
You realize you need both, but you really can't afford to have too many hems clogging up the works.
There's another really good example from the healthcare system. This involves a doctor, Dr. Thompson.
This was during a difficult merger. And mergers are classic cheese-moving events. Everyone is terrified of losing their job, their status, their autonomy. Dr. Thompson was a senior physician leader, but he was resisting the integration. He was being a hem.
He was fighting to keep Cheese Station C, his old way of practicing medicine, and he probably felt like he was fighting for his patients. That was a noble fight.
He did. He thought he was doing the right thing. But after his CEO gave him the story, he had this big realization. He saw that he was ignoring the early warning signs. The entire economics of healthcare were changing. Independent practices were becoming unviable.
So his resistance wasn't noble. It was essentially suicidal for his practice.
Exactly. And having the story gave him a way to admit he was wrong without losing face.
That's the key, isn't it?
It's everything. He could go into a meeting and say, "You know what, I think I'm hemming a bit on this issue." It's a non-threatening way to talk about a very difficult transition. It removes the personal attack.
You're not calling someone stubborn or stupid.
You're just identifying a hem reaction. And suddenly it turns a power struggle into a problem-solving session.
I also really like the family business example. The father and son, Robert and Michael. This is such a classic generational clash.
The old cheese here was manual order processing. The father, Robert, who was the CEO, he loved it. He was convinced it represented a personal touch. He thought if they automated the system, they would lose their soul.
He was conflating the effort with the value.
Perfectly said. But their biggest customer was demanding electronic fulfillment. The cheese was moving whether Robert liked it or not.
And Robert was confusing the method with the purpose.
Right. The purpose is to serve the customer. The method was just manual data entry. So when he finally read the book, he realized the electronic system was the new cheese. It wasn't a threat to relationships. In fact, the opposite happened.
What do you mean?
Automating all the boring, repetitive paperwork gave his staff more time to actually talk to customers, to build those relationships.
So the relationship actually got better once they let go of the old method.
Way better.
Okay, so we've praised the book, we've shown how it can work for individuals and for companies, but we promised a deep dive, and that means we have to look at the other side of the coin. Because Who Moved My Cheese has some very vocal, very intelligent critics. We can't ignore the elephant in the room.
We can't. And honestly, the criticism is valid and it's necessary to discuss. If you look at this book through a socioeconomic lens, it can look, well, it can look pretty ugly.
There's a scathing review mentioned in our source material that really sums up the counter-argument. The critique basically says, wait a minute, this book portrays workers as mice in a maze.
A maze they didn't build and a maze they can't control.
Correct. The critique argues that the book is essentially a fable about corporate capitalism. The little people, that's you, the worker, are told that their only job is to scurry around and find cheese. And the cheese is controlled by these invisible, all-powerful forces, the they who move the cheese.
So the implication is, if your company lays you off, or cuts your benefits, or doubles your workload without a raise, if you complain, you're just being a him.
You're just resisting change.
Exactly. The critic argues that this creates a kind of moral hazard. It encourages blind compliance. It suggests that the system itself is immutable. The maze is just a fact of life, like gravity, and your only option is to adapt to it.
It discourages you from ever questioning why the cheese was moved or who moved it, or if the maze is even a fair place to begin with.
Right. It basically portrays diminishing rewards as something you should just chase after enthusiastically. Oh, you cut my pay and eliminated my pension. Great. An opportunity for me to find new cheese.
Which sounds absurd when you say it like that.
It does. The review calls the book horrid for that very reason. It can be seen as propaganda designed to make employees accept bad treatment quietly. And you have to admit, that's a valid lens. If a company uses this book to justify toxic management or just poor strategic planning by blaming the employees for not adapting, well, that's a gross misuse of the parable.
It pathologizes legitimate grievances. It's as if you complain about injustice, you're just being a hem. That's basically corporate gaslighting.
It can be.
So how do we balance these two views? Is it a resilience guide or is it a compliance manual?
I think the answer really lies in your circle of control. If you're in a situation where you truly cannot change the system, like a global recession, a disruptive technology like the CD-ROM, a natural disaster, then the HAW approach is your best survival strategy.
Fighting gravity doesn't work.
It doesn't. You have to adapt. But if you are in a situation where the maze itself is the problem, where it's unjust or exploitative,
then maybe being a hem is the right thing to do.
then perhaps being a hem standing your ground, demanding fairness, trying to change the system, might actually be the moral choice. You should stand your ground if you have leverage. But the book isn't written for political revolution. It's written for personal psychological survival. It's about what you can do with your mindset when external circumstances change and you feel like you have no other options.
That makes a lot of sense. It's a tool for personal sanity, not necessarily a treatise on labor rights.
Precisely. It's about moving from victim thinking to opportunity thinking. Because at the end of the day, your anger doesn't hurt the maze. It only hurts you.
So let's bring it all home. What are the key takeaways we want you, the listener, to walk away with today? If you only remember 3 things from our conversation, what should they be?
Okay, first, change is inevitable. They will keep moving the cheese. And whether they is the economy, AI, your partner, or just the simple passage of time, expecting things to stay the same is the root of all the suffering in the story.
Second, suffering is optional. The pain of loss is real, but the suffering depends entirely on your refractory period, your reaction time.
Right. You can be Sniff and Scurry and move on immediately. Or you can be Hengentrick and suffer in that empty room for 6 months before you move anyway. The destination is the same. The amount of pain you endure getting there is your choice.
And third,
the transition from asking, why did this happen to me, to where is the new opportunity? The sooner you can start to visualize that new cheese, the sooner the fear of the maze it evaporates.
I love that. And I want to leave everyone with one final provocative thought. We spent this whole deep dive talking about finding cheese within the maze. The book sort of assumes the maze is the only reality.
But here's the thought experiment. What if the ultimate goal isn't just about finding new cheese? What if it's about questioning the maze itself?
Are you just running through a maze that somebody else built for you? And what lies outside the maze? That's a question the mice never asked.
But maybe you should. Maybe the ultimate freedom isn't finding new cheese, but finding a new map entirely.
So listener, the challenge for today is simple. Take a look at your life. Are you being a sniff, a scurry, a hem, or a haw right now? And, most importantly, ask yourself the question that changed everything for haw. What would you do today if you weren't afraid?
And then go do it.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you in the next maze.